You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
It's cold. What is good? It's the Wednesday edition of Leafs Morning Take presented by Bet365. Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill with you. What's going on, Rosie?
Oh, it's not too cold out this way, man. That Chinook came over the mountains and it is warm out, so I feel for you.
Lucky for you, I saw a report just before starting this podcast today that we could get down to minus 35, which is big. Yeah, a low tonight of minus 35, which is like stay your ass inside territory for me.
Like a wet minus 35. Holy, people are going to die. That's not very cool, man. My thoughts and prayers are out to you.
Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION, all in uppercase today. That's NATION, N-A-T-I-O-N. Our Super Chat charity partner this season is Sick Kids. Want to make sure that your question or comment gets on the show. Hit us up with a Super Chat. Proceeds from our Super Chat will go to Sick Kids, ranked the #1 research-intensive children's hospital in Canada and third in the world. Some news off the top, Rosie. Max Pacioretty placed on injured reserve, which means he'll be out through at least Saturday. They don't play after Saturday until next Wednesday, I believe, when they host the Minnesota Wild. So maybe an opportunity for some rest. He did take a clapper off the head, quite frankly, on Saturday. But Toronto recalling Jacob Quillen has played 35 games with the Marlies this season, 6 goals, 15 points, coming off a 4-point weekend. Undrafted, of course. He's 22, a bottom 6 type center type player. Signed out of Quinnipiac, spent a couple seasons there, but the big year was last year. And to get drafted or undrafted, is big time stuff. And maybe this kid gets a chance over the next couple weeks here.
Yeah, good for him. I don't know a whole lot about him, but he must be doing some good things to get that kind of recognition. And for a guy that's grinded his way up, undrafted, late bloomer, that's pretty exciting for him and his family. So good on him. Take those paychecks while you can, and hopefully you get inserted into the lineup. I thought we might see Grebenkin get another run at this thing and see what he's got to offer, but they went with this kid, so good for him. Hats off.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if Quillen actually gets into a game. From my understanding, he's not going to play in this game. And again, we just talked about maybe it's just a factor of giving Max Pacioretty, a veteran, some rest. And maybe, we've seen this before throughout the NHL where it's like you give a kid, and I know he's 22, a bit of a look, a little peek around the corner what the National League's all about. So I don't know if he'll actually play some games here.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. But obviously, like I said, he's doing things right to get the call, and he's on their radar, which is probably pretty exciting for him.
Producer Vic brings up he scored the OT winner against Nyes in the Frozen Four Finals. Big game player. So judging by one game, he is now a big game player, and that's why Leafs fans get the rap for every player being a future Sidney Crosby.
I don't know if that's fair, but no, I don't know. It's I don't know. That's kind of the way to do it. They'll get called up and not get thrown right into the fire right away, and get a little lay of the land, see how things are done, get acquainted with those guys. It's probably pretty nerve-wracking for the guy to get that call, but he gets to kind of dip his toe in a little bit beforehand. Usually those mid-season first call-ups are, you're on the road, you're in some other town, you're getting ready for some other game, and you get this call and your life gets turned upside down. You're getting on a plane or going somewhere else and getting to the rink where you don't know anybody with your gear on your shoulder. They put new gloves on you and pants, and oh my God, it's and then you end up playing that night usually. So it's a routine breaker, but this kid gets to dip his toe in the water and kind of feel things out first, which if he does get a game, which I kind of hope he does, that's probably the way to do it.
Be so damn cool. Just take that stroll here in Toronto, head down the Gardner there, and you see Austin Matthews, you see Mitch Marner, you see Willie Nylander, you see Matthew Nyes, who we just talked about. You scored against this guy like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago in the Frozen Four, and you see what real National League hockey is all about, right? You're a guy who's played in both the AHL and the NHL. You make that leap, it is something special, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. It's if you haven't had a sniff, or if you haven't been drafted, or you've had to work your way through or find an opening and you get the opportunity with an original 6 team in Toronto, it's pretty cool. And in Toronto, it's nice that they share the same practice building. You just walk your gear down, and you're somewhat familiar with the way things go. It's probably not as much of a shock. It's pretty handy actually to be a guy that goes up and down. But like I said, this guy's probably got the thrill of a lifetime, and I hope that he does get a game in, and I hope he gets a little bit of a heads up on when that is, because I imagine his family back home is pretty exciting too, which is all those things that go into a situation like this that people might not think about.
Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button here at the Leafs Nation 401. Rosie, we're a statement away from the Oilers blaming the Maple Leafs for the McDavid suspension. This has reached an all-time high of just bitching and moaning and complaining. Just take it. I mean, your best player is getting a nice little break, and there's calls of this guy boycotting the Four Nations. Like, that's the level we have gone to here.
Yeah, I heard they're organizing a candlelit vigil outside Rogers Place, and thoughts and prayers go out to them. Absolutely. I don't get it, man. It could have been a 2-gamer. I totally get that. Austin Matthews had that one where he was eating cross checks from, who was that, Darlene?
Yeah.
And he gets it. He kind of goes back. I don't even know, like, same with the Morgan Riley thing, Matthews. This one, sometimes the cross check is just like an FU, and it kind of comes up and gets the guy in the mouth where you don't really mean to. I don't know about this one, but what about not cross checking the guy in the face and just shedding your gear and beating the wheels? It's Connor Garland. Like McDavid, if you're that fed up and you're tired and you're tired of the guys, being draped on you, shed your shit, feed his face with 4 punches and wrestle him to the ground. Let that reverberate through the whole league on Connor McDavid will stand up for himself, and you might have to answer a bell if you're doing that kind of thing to him. Isn't that like, just what would you get for that? There's a good chance that he drops his stuff too, and you both get 5 for fighting, and then everyone's jacked, and isn't that better than cross-checking a guy in the face where you're getting a suspension? It just seems like no one's even thought of that. This is how far removed from an actual hockey fight some of these players are, is that just their first reaction is, I'm going to cross-check him in the face and then complain about a suspension. I don't know, but to me, there's a lot of other ways you could handle being frustrated, and the one he took is just a one-way street to a suspension.
Utterly ridiculous in my world. Even more to that fact, it's now grown men fighting each other over social media about a grown man cross-checking another grown man in the face. Let's get real with life, man. There are bigger fish to fry than debating a Connor McDavid suspension in mid-January. Honestly, if I'm an Oilers fan, I'm happy. He gets a 3-day rest. Just move on. Do you think the money even matters? I know he's forfeiting 150 grand or whatever it is. This didn't have to be a big story, man. You do the crime, you do the time, Rosie.
I don't know. It's funny. Every team, sometimes I'm around Montreal Canadiens fans, and they just think that the world is against them and the league is against them. I'm like, why? They don't even think about you. And Leafs fans are guilty of it as well. And Oilers fans, obviously, I just don't get what their problem is. They're calling for the league should protect their players. From what? From Connor Garland slightly holding on to him a couple of times? I just don't get. I just don't get it. You crush a guy in the face. Morgan Riley got 5. Matthews has gotten 2. Could have been 3. Like I said, this could have been a 2-game suspension. Fine. You're making that much stink over a 1-gamer. There's like I said, there was another situation with Connor McDavid earlier in the week where he bonks a guy's chin and takes him out of the game for the rest of the game. At the same play with Tyler Myers, another cross-check to the face. The league might clamp down a little bit and give 3 games, saying, you guys just keep cross-checking each other in the face. We're going to send a message that this isn't acceptable. I just don't get where their outrage is coming from. What the hell do you expect? Tell your guy to man up and do it the old-fashioned way if he's frustrated with the guy on a way of defending yourself that's only garners a 5-minute major, and usually even strength at that too. So there's other ways around this. I've never cross-checked a guy right in the face. As crazy and ridiculous as I've played at times, to cross-check, I've always punched guys and with the glove on, with the glove off, but just that cross-check in the face, it's just oh God, it's a one-way ticket to a suspension. Use your head.
That's a bit surprising. You've never cross-checked somebody in the face. Maybe it just speaks volumes to your character, right?
People I've played against would probably argue that, but I really didn't use my stick to that effect ever. It was always drop your stick and all right, let's handle this. And step up to the plate if you're going to play like that. Or I've been pushed to the edge where now this is my response. But cross check to the mouth, I mean, it's just like everything stops and everyone goes, ooh, and you just get kicked out of the game and the league comes in and says, here's your whack, because everyone knows that's not acceptable. So I don't know where their outrage is coming from, but thankfully we will move on from it this week.
A little bit of a gray area for sure on you, and I don't know if we're going to move on. As I mentioned, I think we're maybe 15 minutes away from a statement coming out. The Oilers pinpointing the Maple Leafs as the issue why McDavid got suspended. In support of sick kids, John McLean sends us a super chat. Really appreciate it. Connor Garland is such a piece of shit, though. Dude hooks his legs and holds McDavid. Don't cross-check him in the face, but what are the refs? McCauley, a joke, man. Sorry, there's a lot of grammatical issues there. I couldn't read it properly. You got it.
Whatever, man. It's a story as old as time. Guys try to take away superstars' time and space, and they try to frustrate them, and that's what was going on there. And again, just the reaction doesn't really warrant it. If you're frustrated in this league for as long as it's been alive, you can even get the jump on a guy and start feeding a guy like Garland. And the best part about that is everyone sees that and goes, oh my God, if I'm going to go and try to get in McDavid's kitchen, I might have to scrap tonight. And every guy like Connor Garland is not interested in that. So it might alleviate that pressure and give him some space. Sidney Crosby's done it a ton of times. Gets pissed off, sheds his shit, and starts hammering a guy. No suspension. Like, it's a no-brainer.
John in the chat here is blaming Wes McCauley. He said, we're missing the point. It is Wes McCauley's fault. Again, I could argue this until I'm blue in the face, but I just think it's so damn hilarious. It's just stop already. We can move on from this McDavid thing. They did lose last night. I got the Capitals at plus money, so I feel good about that. Meantime, Rosie, in an article, for Daily Faceoff, Matt Larkin linked the Leafs to a potential landing spot for Philadelphia defenseman Rasmus Ristolainen. Do you like the fit? 2 years left at $5.1 million per season after this one. On paper, I think it makes a lot of sense, but cap-wise, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, as we were talking off air, I think Philly would have to eat a lot of that money and retain a whole bunch of that salary to make it work. But as a 30-year-old defenseman, a high pick who hasn't really worked out, as you mentioned, Buffalo kind of might have ruined that guy, and now he's under Tortorella in Philly. And I haven't watched this guy a lot. I don't sit down with my time and watch Buffalo Sabres games, and I'd like to watch Philly a little bit more, but just doesn't happen. And I can just see that this guy has got potential, right-handed shot. He's a big body. He's not aged out. He could fit. I think if you put him on our roster right now, he makes the team better. No question. Can you make a deal like that? What do you got to give up for him? How much can they retain? That's a completely different story, but it's intriguing that these names are starting to funnel in as we creep closer and closer to the March 7th trade deadline.
It's a good synopsis. Great breakdown. You need a ghostwriter or something for that breakdown of Rasmus Ristolainen. But yeah, I echo those sentiments. And on top of that, as you've noticed in the standings, like there's just so many teams involved on, in the Eastern Conference playoff standings, where I wonder if you get to a level where a lot of these teams are buyers or just stand pat and don't sell. And Ristolainen, quite frankly, has been a name linked back to his days with Buffalo to Toronto. And I just think there are probably better options out there. Like, for example, Luke Shen, even at his age, I still think has a lot to offer. He could be a potential fit. But I think, again, on the surface, you look at the prototypical guy that would probably flourish under Craig Berube. It is Rasmus Ristolainen, but it's about price tag. It's about cap hit. And it's also about the return. Like, we've talked about this quite a bit this season with the Maple Leafs. What do they have to give up in return if it's not going to be any of their top prospects? They're missing some draft picks. You run out of racetrack really, really quickly, and then you don't want to get involved with some of these goalies they have too. So, like, what are you trading is always my question too.
Well, yeah, that's what people don't understand when they're talking about trades. Get so-and-so. It's like, no one's giving anyone of value away for free. You have to trade. It's like a trade. It has to make sense for both people. Do you know how a trade works? And in any facet of life, I'll trade you this for that. You can't trade a snack pack for a banana because kids don't want that shit. No one's trading their good stuff for your garbage. So, I mean, it's just, and then you talk about the cap. It's difficult to make trades right now. So I don't get too invested at this point in time. Everyone, for some reason, people love to gobble that stuff up in the insiders, and there's rumors of this, and people go bananas. And I'm just like, why even bother if that's just something that's never going to happen? Logistically, I wait to see when things are really close and say, okay, let's hammer it down and see what needs to happen to get this thing over the hump. But I just don't think we're there yet.
Put it this way: do you think the Leafs could utilize or use? We'll frame him as a top 4 defenseman, a guy, a right-handed shooter. I still think they're one shy, so I would be open to it at the very least.
Yeah, me too. I mean, you look at like a Connor Timmins and a Myers and the guys that
Yeah.
they're using. I just think if you want to go deep in the playoffs, if you're trying to win the Stanley Cup this year and make a run and do something special, I think there's a little bit of a chink in the chain, so to speak, on the back end where you're going to have to play these guys, 17, 18, 19, 20 minutes in a night. And that's just throughout the series. And as you go deeper in the conference final, I think you're going to get exposed a little bit. And, just one kind of guy that's on the edge of kind of being that stud, but could also play, in the bottom pairing. You insert that guy somehow, and it just shores you up and just alleviates a lot of pressure. Your puck's in the hands of the forwards a lot more often. You're out of your zone a lot quicker. Your goaltender's not tested and tried as much. I think they could use a right-handed defenseman to jump into that slot.
We are 50 some odd days away, Rosie, from the first ever TLN Nation vacation in Music City. Join us in Nashville from Thursday, March 20th to Sunday, March 23rd for what promises to be the trip of a lifetime. In addition to attending the Toronto-Nashville game at Bridgestone Arena on the Saturday night, you'll also get a chance to see us do some live podcasting at Love and Exile, Winery and Bar. With that in mind, you just never know who could show up. We're offering 2 packages, one with flights, $24.50 plus tax, one without, $12.99 plus tax. Hotel rooms are double occupancy. For more information on how to book, head on over to nationgear.ca. That's nationgear.ca, or check out the link in our show bio. Life's too short for ordinary vacations. All right, there you have it. Looking forward to tonight's edition of the Leafs Nation After Dark with Zach Phillips to break down this Leafs Jackets game. Also, coming up in about 15 from now, Jeff Marek of The Sheet dropping by the program here.
Yes, sir. I know. Exciting day for many reasons. We will see, man. I don't know. This Columbus game kind of scares me, man. Their Leafs are a heavy favorite, and if you follow them a lot, I think there's a good chance Hildeby's going to be in. What are they on, a 3-game winning streak now after their 3-game losing streak? And I don't know, those games are just ripe for them to take a little bit of a breather. I know they're hot right now, and Matthews, Nylander are scoring like crazy. Nyes is hot. I as far as the value and everything, I'm just not betting it, but I just hope that these guys, it's one of those ones that's kind of tough to focus up for. It's easy for one guy to be like, okay, well, just subconsciously, this is kind of going to be a cruiser game where you're thinking about who you're playing with and am I going to get power play time and what kind of points could I put up tonight? And everyone kind of subconsciously has that going on, and you come out a little flat and you look around and say, hey, where is everybody? Meanwhile, you're playing a team who's already beat you this year, who's playing absolute hammer down hockey, and they are going to want to take advantage of you. Get yourself behind the 8 ball, and then it's the NHL where it's tough to claw back. So we'll see. I'm not saying that's going to happen by any stretch, but I'm not betting this game just for future reference.
If I do recall, that October 22nd game that you referenced, Hildeby played in that game, was lit up like a Thanksgiving holiday turkey. So we'll see if he gets a bit of revenge in this one. And it sounds it's tracking like Hildeby's going to start for the Maple Leafs against Columbus. At the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube, by the way. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Leafs Want to Take wherever you find your podcast. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget to visit LeafsNation.com. And again, Jeff Marek is coming up, by the way. He just texted me, can I start by asking Rosie a question? So we'll see what that question is to start off our time with Jeff Marek. But Columbus in town, they've been playing really, really good. We label it as a trap game because it certainly is. Columbus always seems to have Toronto's number, but they're 6-1-1 in the last 8 games here. And of note, Joseph Woll got a bit of rest time yesterday, Rosie. Didn't hit the ice with the rest of the team. We talked about it the last couple of days. It was tracking towards a Hildeby game, and you got to find ways to get your backup in there. So this is one of those games.
I know. Would they maybe do a rest game because he is going to play tonight? Do you think a rest day, or is that a guaranteed Hildebeest?
I think he was the first goalie off the ice, which pretty much predicts the starter. So
Yeah, it makes sense. And I don't know. Wool has been solid. He's carried a pretty heavy load. It seems like this Stolar's injury is dragging on forever, which, I think he had a procedure on his knee. So maybe not too surprising. And why rush him? But Wool has carried a workload. And as you know, his knock has been durability. So it's not shocking to me. He's done his job, done it well, got them out of that funk too, and played well the last three. So I think that putting Hildebeest in here against Columbus is probably the most commonsensical thing to do. It's just a matter of if those guys are going to play in front of him and bring your best for a game that might be a little bit hard to get up for.
By the way, Craig Berube about 10 minutes ago saying no timeline on Max Pacioretty yet, but it's longer than day to day. So keep that in mind moving forward on Max Pacioretty. Some lineup news: Connor Dewar day to day, upper body's not going to play. We just talked about Pacioretty. We talked about Jacob Quillen, 22-year-old out of the Marlies, recalled. He's not going to play in this game. But it looks like Ryan Reeves is going to come back in. Anytime that happens, you're playing Columbus. The prospects of the first ever tilt between Reeves and Matthew Olivier, highly touted as maybe the best pound-for-pound scrapper in the league right now, Rosie.
Yeah, he might be my favorite. He can play a regular shift. I like the way he fights. He picks his spots well. He's responsible with it. And by all accounts, it could be tonight for Revo to get in one. He ran his mouth a little bit after the Montreal game about, the young kid not giving him one when he
What'd you
thought
think
he
of that?
should. I get it. I mean, Revo's a different style than me when it comes to, beaking off and flexing in the belt and all that stuff, and to each their own. But there's been times where I want one and a guy wouldn't give it to me because of the score. And there's been times where I shook a guy off and said, no chance right now. On the flip side, there's also been other times, I think Sean Thornton, he's been, hey, I'll oblige you right now, even though, we just scored. Or this one time he had fresh stitches right above his eye, which I blew open again. And that probably pissed him off. And there's been times where I said, hey, I have no reason to go right now. I know what you're trying to do. But there's also that little bit of honor going, I might have to cross paths with you sometime where I need one too, as Reeves mentioned in his interview. And I've said, yeah, let's go. And you just try to do your best and not give them any wind in their sails and use it as a momentum boost for your team as well, even though it might not be the best time for you to scrap. And that was something I was very cognizant of it, is the timing of your fights. Like I was not, a big no reason guy, big show, square off, take your gloves off really slow. I tried to use it as an energy boost for my team and pick my spots with it. And as Revo said, he wasn't pleased with the way Jack Guy handled it, but might be a different story tonight. We'll see how the game goes. I think that's going to be pretty indicative, but it seems like Revo has felt the heat a little bit and heard the whispers, and he wants to get one under his belt.
Only in Toronto does a fourth liner get a forum or get the forum on a day off following a tidy victory, the way Ryan Reeves did on Tuesday. Like, we are far removed. Like that was like 3 weeks ago, as far as I'm concerned, that game against Montreal. But just on Tuesday, that's when he speaks about Jack-Eye. I think Jack-Eye's played like 2 games since that game, man.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how it goes. Jack had a good fight against Rempe, as we mentioned or yesterday's show
Sunday.
as well.
Yeah.
So things are still going on, but I don't know. With Revo, now it's come to the point where it's kind of an odd thing, and I think it's on his mind. And not every day that he's in the lineup does he have an opponent who's even close to his weight class. So yeah, it's not a necessity by any stretch of the imagination, but I can imagine it's on his mind. And if something happens or the game goes a certain way or a certain shift comes across the wrong way and those two are nose to nose, I would not be surprised, and I would be paying to watch it.
Kind of reminds me when I used to play baseball. Like, I'm chasing hits, man. Like, I was swinging at everything. Now he's chasing fights. Like, that's the level we've gone to in Ryan Reeves this season. He is chasing fights. Anybody who will go him, he's ready to dance at this point.
I remember a time when teams had 2 and 3 guys and you would want a night off and you just couldn't get one, and your knuckles are destroyed and you got to go again and cracking helmets again. It was a Wild West back then, man. And obviously those days are gone. It looked like they were making a little comeback with Rempe's push last year, actually, which is kind of exciting. But yeah, for a guy like Revo, he made his bed. There's been plenty of times earlier on the season when he could have, would have, should have gotten one and chose not to. And now he's sitting here with a little bit of a question mark over his head with people asking what the heck's going on with you. If you're going to be on this roster and make your money and be in the lineup, you'd think you could get into the odd one and try to boost your team that way and protect everyone and send a message and whatever else. But hasn't happened yet, so we'll wait for tonight.
By the way, can we get official comment from you? First and foremost, that was a beauty for Matt Rempe against Ottawa, but he's now 3.5 goals away from matching your goal output for your NHL career, right?
Yeah, that's a tough mountain to climb, kid. Keep trying, keep going. You're not there yet, but no, that was a slick little play, man. By all
It
accounts, the
was.
kid, I think he can. He showed his mitts there. That was pretty silky on the backhand, and he can obviously do enough things. Like, he's not a slug. They don't allow slugs in the league anymore. You just can't get there. It's too fast. And for a guy that's 6'7" to be able to play, fairly regularly in that lineup is impressive. And he does a lot of things right. I think he's got a lot to learn with picking his spots with the scraps and the hits and learning how to hit properly and fight properly. But he's obviously a guy that they like to go back to because of his willingness and his ability to hit, and he's just one of those guys that is always a gamer, and I think that's contagious throughout the lineup. So he is doing things right, and I hope he puts the pieces together and stays in that league because he's an exciting player and seems to be on the highlight reel no matter which way he goes about it.
In support of sick kids, John sends us another super chat. Nick, did you find your jacket? No, I did not. By the way, went out and purchased one last night. Got a pretty good deal on a brand new winter jacket. So that settles that. Also, extend Matthew Knies ASAP. Dude is on a 30-goal pace and has scored twice as much as Slav. Good one, Habs fans. For some reason, I don't know if you've seen this fight on social media. People want to compare Knies and Juraj Slavkovsky in Montreal. Like, the rivalry on Twitter has been great between Habs fans and Leafs fans.
I know it's a pretty one-sided affair in that department too for the first overall pick compared to our, what was he,
Second rounder.
late second
Late
rounder.
second.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you don't know what's going to happen with these guys, man. The draft is sometimes a crapshoot, and I think they just, that's scouting. They saw something in this Matthew Knies guy and were able to scoop him up before anybody else, and he has developed and turned into, not a premier prospect, but a premier player. Again, in his second year in the league, making this much noise, playing with the big boys and getting the job done. He's an asset to this team, and I don't think we'd trade him for many
Don't start.
other guys
Don't
of the
start
same
this
ilk.
convo again, because I got blown up earlier this year when I suggested if Sidney Crosby's available, yes, in fact, I am trading Matthew Knies. I'm sorry, and Leafs fans still hate me to that day because of that convo. Simone Benoit earlier today, I don't think he knows it, but he's so fucking strong. It's so true. You call him thick, right, Matthew Knies?
Yeah, he's just one of those beastly bodied guys where when you go up and hit him, it's just like hitting a fire hydrant. You're like, what the hell was that? There's other guys that are big, but they're not that strong on their skates and they don't handle it well. They don't plant their edges. And it's just like, whatever, your size or your weight doesn't really work to your advantage. But Nyes is the guy that, like, as soon as I watched him play before he came up with the Leafs, I just noticed his wide stance, big body presence in the corners and on the walls, and he's not getting pushed off the puck. Guys are coming to push him off the puck and bouncing off of him. And then to have the skill and hockey IQ to be able to play with the big boys and finish the plays when they do get it to him and not be surprised when those guys get him the puck, like the other night, for example, to be able to finish. He's kind of got it all. I just, obviously we're pretty, we're shining the knob of this guy pretty hard on this show, but it's for good reason, if you ask me.
Worth it. And we talked about statements earlier on. I would still have a statement from the NHL about the Gretzky non-call back in, what was it, 93, Brett Hull in the crease. Like, we're getting to an elite level with these statements throughout the NHL, and certainly the Edmonton Oilers a part of that conversation. I couldn't help but chuckle at what's going on in Pittsburgh right now. Did you see this? They're open to trading anybody, but they won't retain salary. They're not trading Crosby. They're not trading Malkin. So who does that leave, Rosie? Please, let me ask you that.
The guy that
Michael Bunting.
Or the guy that he brought in, Carlson. I don't know. It's I do not put a lot of energy into the Pittsburgh Penguins at this point in time. But yeah, by all accounts, every time I hear something come across my feed, he is doing things that don't seem to be trending in the right direction for the Pittsburgh Penguins, which is unfortunate for Sidney Crosby and that entire organization in town and city, which is, if you remember where they were at, damn near bankruptcy before Sidney Crosby, he's turned them into, one of the perennial teams that people look to as far as, first class organizations. And yeah, I don't know. They're getting a little taste of Kyle Dubas, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. And they're just an aging team. But then for example, I see a team like the Washington Capitals on Tuesday night. They go into Edmonton. I know McDavid's not playing, but like those two franchises, Washington and Pittsburgh, were sort of on the same trajectory. And one's sort of taken a step for the better, and one hasn't here. It's crazy.
Yeah, decisions to be made, man. It's a tough world. I don't envy general managers their positions that they get put in with the salary cap. It's just not easy. And you live with your decisions, and you lie in the bed that you make. And yeah, the Caps are on fire right now. Why were they the underdog against the Oilers yesterday with Connor McDavid out, and they're the number one team in the league? Like sometimes it just does not make sense to me on why the Oilers get so pumped up. Like they were Stanley Cup favorites forever to start the season. Don't really understand it, but like you said, you got the best of that one. And, hats off to the Capitals for what they're doing this year.
Definitely. Just awaiting word to confirm we can bring Marek in here at any moment. But Jeff Marek set to join us from the sheet. Make sure to check that out, subscribe, and like as well. It's the Leafs and the Columbus Blue Jackets. The three big notes in this game: a 3-game win streak for the Leafs, 3-0-0 since John Tavares went down. We're not really talking about that. The media hasn't talked about that at all. John Tavares missing in action, and they've just been winning and winning and winning. And you compound that with Jake McCabe coming back too, right?
Well, it's funny. They were in that slide and Tavares goes down, and we said, it'd be pretty leafy if it took something like that to get them out of their funk and give their heads a shake and get going and get the power play going. And it's exactly what's happened. I don't know. You can almost, telegraph this team with the weird things they do. And there's such a trend in them that you can see them coming a mile away. And once again, what pulled them out of their funk was one of their premier players and leaders going down and getting injured, and off they go to the races. So, by all accounts, it's just layer upon layer of injuries this year with this team. Like every time a guy comes back to almost getting healthy, someone else goes on LTIR. It's embarrassing, man. It's if you look at the man games lost and just the players and the personnel that have gone down, it's been crazy. So I would just love for some time before the playoffs for this team to be completely healthy and get some juju going.
Certainly. Coming up, Rosie, as you know, February 15th, the Leafs Nation will be hosting a watch party at Greta Bar on King Street West as Canada and United States get together at the Four Nations. We've got ticket giveaways, signed memorabilia trivia, and T-shirt tosses happening all night long. Tickets are just $10 if you're feeling frisky. However, we're also offering a VIP option for $40, which includes a Greta burger, a beverage of your choice, and a game card to play some arcade games. Doors open 2 hours before puck drop. Grab your ticket today at nationgear.ca. Greta Bar. Let the games begin as you bring in from the sheet. It is Jeff Marek. What's going on, Marek?
I was there about a month and a half ago with the guys from Hockey Night in Scottsdale doing an event there. That is a cool place. Everyone's gonna love that one. Can I start, Nick, by completely hijacking your show?
Go
I'm gonna
ahead.
apologize in advance here, but I get so few times to ask Jay Rosehill questions, and I have one. Just hearing you talk a couple of seconds ago about Matthew Olivier and Ryan Reeves, and Reeves is having a hard time finding one these days, and he can kind of hear it and he can feel it. Like Jay, like once upon a time in the NHL, guys knew when someone else needed a fight. You know what? It's been 15 games. I can't find one. I need one. Okay, bud, no problem. I'll do it. There was almost like that courtesy between tough guys, and it probably ended as the tough guys sort of evolve their way out of the game. But work with me on this one. Like, how many times have you had someone saddle up next to you when you played and said, like, you know what? I'm really feeling the heat here. I could really use one. Can you do me a favor?
Yeah, it happens. It happens a fair bit. I remember, one time with Mike Rupp, they thought I speared Letang, but I just like put my stick near him and Letang dropped like a sack of flour. And Bill McCreary tore me a new one and everything else. I'm like, oh my God. So Mike Rupp comes over and he's like, hey, I know you didn't spear him, but I got to come over here and ask for one. And I was like, all right, I'll oblige you. And away we went. Another time, Sean Thornton, like I get put out there because we just got scored on. Thornton's out there. He's freshly cut over his eyebrow with like 6 stitches in his eyebrow. And he's like, oh, I don't. And I'm like, I really need one, Thornton. Like, I need this right now. Now's the time. Like, I got to get this one. He's like, all right. And then I remembered that later. And it goes back and forth with those guys. But when you're getting in 12 and 15 fights in a season, you have the time to go back and forth like that. But with with the Jackie and Reeves thing the other night, they're up 3-1. Hockey Night in Canada, Saturday night, that rivalry. let's just say Jack-Eye did go him, regardless of the result, roaring comeback to Toronto Maple Leafs, his organization is going to be looking at Jack-Eye going, do you not know how to pick your spots? Like, do you think that was the time for you to fight
Yeah.
Ryan
But
Reeves?
you know the interesting part about that is though, Rosie, like after Jack-Eye did the shoo go away, it's 3-0. I'm not gonna let any emotion into this game. That's when the Maple Leafs started hitting, and that's when the Maple Leafs came back. It's almost like Jack-Eye turning down the fight, sort of and then Reeves gets smashed by Jack-Eye going up the ice.
Yeah.
It was kind of like 2009. I was showing this on the show yesterday. Max Talbot and Dan Carcillo, where Talbot goes into this fight, and everyone knows that Talbot's going to get clean. The Pens are down 3-1 in the series. Talbot gets wiped out. He does the shh to the Philadelphia crowd that's going crazy, and accused a comeback for the Pittsburgh Penguins. It was almost like Jack-Eye leveling Reeves cued the comeback for the Maple Leafs. And I don't think this has ever been said before in the NHL, but we saw it on Saturday. It's almost as if the Maple Leafs said, how dare they do that to our enforcer? How you can't touch our tough guy. And then it was like cue the comeback for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it was after that, it was a 7-Cobb game. It was a weird one on Saturday. That one was bizarre.
It is funny, and momentum comes from odd places. And honestly, if Revo really wanted one, you can force the issue. I've had guys say, try to shake me off before, but you force the issue. You put them in a position where it's either step up or get embarrassed kind of thing. And, Revo wasn't willing to do that. So there's a million different caveats to how that thing goes. And there's not as much opportunity to analyze it as there used to be, obviously. But, I do understand why Jack-Eye would be like, I'd usually just shake my head. I don't do the whole point at the scoreboard BS and everything. Everyone knows why you'd take a guy off, but in that situation, didn't work out too well for Arbor Jack-Eye. Had it been different, would it be a different result? Hard to say, but that was where his head was at the time.
Had a good one the next night. Had a good one the next night, though, in his defense. Had a beauty the next night against Matt Rempe, of course. Anyway, sorry, Nick. Okay, I'll turn the recreation back to Nick.
Because he was scared.
No, it's fine. I was going to add to that. We've never seen Olivier and Reeves go, so maybe that happens in this game between Columbus and Toronto. But a lot of polarizing debates, Marek, in this market right now. Among them, is this Maple Leafs team different? So I ask you, is the only answer to that come playoff time, Marek, or what?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. There are some teams. It's a great question. And, I've always maintained that in Canada, for all the Canadian teams, there's no such thing as an 82-game season. It is 82 one-game seasons because every single game is an audit on the entire season for that Canadian squad. Again, there is no 82-game season. There are 82 one-game seasons, and perhaps that's felt most with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But at the beginning of the season, there are just some teams that just can't wait to get to the playoffs. It's like there's nothing really we're going to learn about the team during the regular season. And the minute we try to say something about them, it's like grabbing a handful of water because, Mitch Marner is having, the best season of his career. He's going to put up like 115, 120 points. And what's the conversation? Let's see what happens in the playoffs. Doesn't matter what anybody does individually or what this team does under Craig Berube, because the test is going to be in the postseason. There are just some teams that are like that. For the longest time before they made the Stanley Cup final against the Boston Bruins with Sedins and Kessler and Bieksa and all those guys, it was all, and Luongo was all about, it doesn't matter what they do in the regular season, it's what they're going to do in the playoffs. That's where all the answers are. So for the Toronto Maple Leafs, they can win the division, they can win the President's Trophy. None of it matters. All the answers for this team are in the postseason. To the question, because I'm giving you a long-winded answer here, Nick, and I apologize. To the question of does it feel different? I always catch myself because doesn't everybody say that every year? Like, isn't that part of Charlie Brown and the football here with this team? This feels different. Well, yeah, it feels different because every team changes, sometimes slightly, sometimes more. But does it feel different? Yeah, it does. But then I catch myself and say, I've said that before about this Maple Leafs team.
But do you feel it extra
Do you feel it more than you did 2 years ago? Do you feel it more than when they brought in Nick Foligno? Do you feel it more? I know what you're getting at. It looks different. It seems to be playing different. It's a team that's getting saves. But until we find out if this team can actually score in the postseason, I'm going to reserve my judgment on. I'm going to reserve my judgment on this squad.
Fair enough. That is the bed that they have made, in fairness.
Yeah,
I want to talk about Matthew Nyes. With those two big
sure.
boys in Matthews and Marner, they've played with some pretty good players and they've had some success. Hyman and Bunting come to mind. But do you think Matthew Nyes is the best option these guys have had to play with?
Certainly looks like it right now. And I think if you're a Maple Leafs fan, you're looking back and you're saying, remember all that talk a couple of years ago about Matthew Nyes and Marc-Andre Fleury and that deal? And you're just saying to yourself, sometimes the best deals you make are the other ones that you didn't. I think that it's certainly trending in that direction. Again, I want to see more runway here. I want to see more time with Matthew Nyes. But as far as, checking boxes along the way and jumping over hurdles, I mean, you love the skies, you love the skill. I heard you guys talking about how, he's unaware of just how tough he is. I believe that. I think that's true of most young players in the NHL that are strong like Matthew Nyes. I mean, it certainly seems so, and that it's heading in that direction. It looks like it. You love the skill set that he has, and for some guys, I remember Nathan McKinnon, and I'm not comparing Matthew Nyes to Nathan McKinnon, so let's us all calm down. But the point that I'm making is some guys take a little bit longer to really feel comfortable in the NHL. Rosie, you know this better than me and Nick, clearly, and obviously. For Nathan McKinnon, it was about 30 games. And then it was like, okay, now Nathan McKinnon can play the same way that he played in Halifax with the Mooseheads. And he's just gotten better and better and better. Some guys take a little bit longer. Some guys pick it up quicker, but it seems as if now what we're seeing, and it's a beautiful thing to watch, you're starting to see a young player sort of hit his stride, where the skill and the confidence are starting to go hand to glove. And when you surround him with players like, Matthews and Marner, I mean, one of two things can happen, because you may look at it and say, I'm playing with Matthews and Marner, just go to the net and put my stick down, and I'm going to get, 50 points accidentally. And some may think that that's true, but I would make the argument that playing with elite level players is more difficult because they're not wired to do simple things out there. So you really have to be able to think on their wavelength. And so far, Matthew Nyes, a young Matthew Nyes, has been able to do that. That to me is the most impressive. Because I always think that it's harder to play with elite level players because they're not wired like normal players. You have to think at a different level.
The best part, I think he seems really low maintenance. Like, he knows his job. Go in front of the net. Every goal is like within 5 feet of the net. And, it's great when you have those two guys do their thing beside you. I want to get your thoughts on Jake McCabe, because maybe,
Sure.
it's a bias thing, but I don't think he's getting enough love and praise nationally, internationally, in the States as well. He's having an unbelievable season.
Yep.
And there has been some conversation out there in the last couple of years about having an award for the top defensive defenseman. I think he would be in the front running for that award.
I don't know about front running. I think front running
like?
top defensive defenseman this year in the NHL, like pure defense. Like, there are two pairs in the NHL right now that are crushing it. Number one is Jonas Siegenthaler and Jonathan Kovacevic with New Jersey. That combination, like they match up against all the top dogs in the Eastern Conference, and they shut everybody down. Mikey Anderson and Vladislav Gavrikov in LA do the same thing on that team. Now, I don't know whether I want to sort of pull Jonas Siegenthaler out of that combination and say that's a standalone, because I kind of look at like that is the sort of sum of their parts with that pair. Ditto. Although we've seen Mikey Anderson do this before a little bit with Drew Doughty. Gavrikov, I maintain, is one of the more underrated guys in the league. Like, I would throw Moritz Seider in that. I would throw Braden McNabb. You want to talk about someone that doesn't get any concert at all, who doesn't get any noise? Braden McNabb with the Vegas Golden Knights. When you look at purely defensive metrics for the Toronto Maple Leafs, top of that list is Chris Tanev still. If you follow, if you go to Natural Stat Trick and you sort of follow some of the underlying numbers about, expected goals, expected shots, a lot of the defensive metrics, as much as McCabe sort of passes a lot of the eyeball tests here, he's not even in the top 30. Really. Like, there's a lot of players that are ahead of him, and his teammate Chris Tanev is certainly one of them. Long-winded way of saying probably Jonas Siegenthaler would win that award today, purely defensive. But I do have a lot of time for Jake McCabe, because I think he brings a lot of different things to the table that aren't just defensive metrics. I think that intimidation. I still think that toughness and snarl and all of that means something, certainly come playoff time, and the ability to swim. in a water that's thicker when the puck is heavier. But as far as just like purely best defensive defenseman this year in the NHL so far, Siegenthaler on New Jersey is just absolutely crushing it this year.
Yeah, stats aside, there does seem to be something about McCabe that is just like a calming presence back there, kind of a father figure almost. But
I love
moving,
him. I love him.
for sure, no question. Moving up the depth chart though, with Austin Matthews, it was not long ago. Like there was almost panic buttons being hit. Like, do we shelf this
Yeah.
guy until the playoffs? Was like a common theme. The
Yeah.
Four Nations face-off was not even on the radar anymore. Out of the blue, he comes back unexpectedly, and he's been
Yeah.
himself. He's been on fire. His shot is back, his prowess, his power. Do you
Yeah.
have any insight on what was going on with Austin Matthews?
I have no idea. I remember someone told me a couple of years ago that something's quote unquote wrong, and none of us know what this is really. We suspect a lot of conversation. Oh, it's got to be his back. Oh, clearly it's his shoulder. Like we haven't been told 100% for sure what this thing is. The only thing that I've been told about it is one of the keys to look for. Something's amiss with Austin Matthews when he stops taking one-timers. That's like, so I'm always watching, like if he goes like a bunch of games without taking one-timers, I'm like, okay, are we sort of headed now for Austin Matthews is going to take a break for a little while? I don't think any of this should surprise anybody. And to be honest with you, but the previous point about, shut them down, bubble wrap, nerf the world, all that kind of stuff, stay out of the Four Nations. I do wonder, sorry fans, I know everybody hates this, whether load management is going to become a thing in the NHL, because Rosie, as you know, 82 games is really hard. 82 games is really long. For any athlete. I think this is just going to be one of those things that's baked into the pie with Austin Matthews, that you're just going to have to, you're going to get a guy that could win the Rocket Richard Trophy every year. And you could also have a guy that's got to be sat down for 5 or 10 games in a row. And that's just going to be what it's like for Austin Matthews. But I don't think we should be surprised. I mean, he's amongst the elite at what he does, and his game continues to evolve, and he continues to turn himself into an excellent two-way player as well. I just think that, baked into this one is he's not going to be 100%. Like no player is 100% healthy. I think that, by the time you get that deep into your career, there's something that's nagging, something that's hurting. But, the reality for Austin Matthews is probably going to be, you'll take the Rocket Richard Trophy candidate along with the guy that may see some stretches out of the lineup. You just have to be settled with it, I think.
Yeah, the way he's playing, I'm willing to put to bed that conversation about the Four Nations. I am willing to open up that conversation about Yanni Hakanpää. Like, what are we doing here? But a story for a different day. Check out the LeafsNation.com. Why I think Yanni Hakanpää should not play in the Four Nations. He's played twice in the last 310 days, but I digress. Let's stir shit up. March 7th, the NHL Trade Deadline. Who are some names to watch for? Could Kadri be in the mix? O'Reilly, guys like that. Who are the Leafs hunting here?
I'm glad you mentioned Kadri, because at the beginning of the season, any team that I would talk to who is in sort of acquisition mode would all kind of say the same thing. We're just going to wait for the Calgary Flames to officially fall out of it, and then we're going to knock on Craig Conroy's door. At a certain point, if the Calgary Flames, are completely committed to this rebuild here, there's going to come a time where Nazem Kadri says, like, at my age, do I still want to be part of something like that? Does he ask out? But look, like, the Calgary Flames are in a playoff race here. Like the Calgary Flames, here we are in late January, and the Calgary Flames are still in it. More and making it even more complicated for Calgary, for Craig Conroy, if he wants to be completely committed to this complete overhaul and rebuild of the Calgary Flames. The Vancouver Canucks keep opening doors for them, and the latest door that opened was last night against the Buffalo Sabres. Like all of a sudden, like and I still think that Vancouver does make it in there, but as the losses pile, and like losses to like some really bottom feeding teams here, as Dustin Wolf, who by the way isn't getting enough consideration for the Calder, as Dustin Wolf continues to pull off heroics, and Jonathan Huberdeau has a comeback season, and the kids are more than all right in Calgary, I'm saying to myself, you know what? Maybe it shouldn't be a surprise that there are a lot of teams out there, Nick and Jay, that right now are widening their net when it comes to who they're trying to trade with right now, because I don't think the Calgary Flames are open for business at all. I think the Calgary Flames, I don't think they're going to add anybody. Like, I don't think it's a go for it year for the Calgary Flames, but rebuilds are bunny hops. It's 2 steps back and 1 step forward, or 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And the Calgary Flames find themselves in an envious spot right now. Do they get wasted in the first round if they make it in? Probably, but that's still a couple of home dates and rejuvenate the crowd, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the Calgary Flames, where many teams thought they would be open for business now, and Craig Conroy would be getting his trade deadline ducks in a row, and this guy's going to go first, and this guy's going to go second, and this is going to get us this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's off the table. Calgary Flames might make the playoffs, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, you're right. There's just a lot of teams, I think, in the conversation for a playoff spot. And the Four Nations, that 2-week break won't help leading up to March 7th as well. So the Leafs will add. We just don't know who at this point in time. Great stuff. What can we expect on the sheet today?
We are going to talk to Andrew Brewer. We're going to talk. So Andrew is one of the great video coaches. He was actually the video coach who was responsible for the very first coaches challenge in the history of the NHL. Was a Thomas Plekanec high stick on Jonathan Bernier in a Toronto-Montreal game in 2015. So we'll talk to him about video coaches and what a day in the life is like for them. And Erin Ambrose, the defender of the week in the PWHL for the Montreal Victoires. She will drop by with a PWHL update. And that's the show today. Plus, I want to park some time to talk about that Edmonton Oilers statement that we saw last night. Rosie, can I ask you, I started this off by asking Rosie a question.
Go
Nick,
ahead.
with your permission, I want to end with asking Rosie a question.
That's good. Go ahead.
Okay. If you were Connor McDavid and you saw that put out on your behalf, what would you think, Rosie?
Oh, I'd be embarrassed, man. I mean, I just don't get what the hoopla is about. The guy got overly frustrated for the second time in a week. He, did, not that the original clip on the shoulder put the kid out of the game, whatever. It's probably him being soft, but the second time he's in the news in a week and just a blatant, vicious cross check right to the face. What do you expect? I would take my lumps and move on and wish my organization would do the same thing.
The funny thing about the whole thing, and I sort of threw this out as sort of sideways snark last night on Twitter, is, here's the Oilers putting out this statement portraying Connor McDavid as the victim. Meanwhile, Evan Bouchard's out there saying, I just got cross-checked in the face. Is there going to be a statement from my team about how I got cross-checked in the face by Tyler Myers? Feathers.
And no one's mad that Tyler Myers got a 3-game suspension. There's 2 of the identical things, and everyone's only mad at the superstar. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Makes the hockey world go round, boys. Makes the hockey world go round. Thanks,
Let's
fellas.
not bury the lead, though. Why is it the Leafs' fault that McDavid got suspended? Right?
I saw that. Everything, it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. You should do a segment, guys, called "Oh, look, there's my Maple Leafs navel," where everything has to revert back to the Toronto Maple Leafs somehow. Somehow, someone will make that argument. Yes.
Yeah. It's just something special that they're just bitching and moaning about this. But Marek, great job. Enjoy the show today.
Thanks, pals.
Thanks, Jeff.
Jeff Marek from The Sheet. Make sure you check that out. Today's episode, like and subscribe as well. Available wherever you find your podcasts, on YouTube as well. It's the Leafs and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Dennis Hildeby, as mentioned, getting the call in this one. It's time for the last call, brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION, all in uppercase today. That's NATION, NATION. I'm just going to go back to the, simple and sweet Austin Matthews ATG, Rosie.
I saw that. I took it too, but I sweetened it up. Simple as that as well. I hate the line on this thing. I hate everything about the actual game betting, but I'm going Matthew Knies first-time goal scorer at plus 1,800. Give me a break. Sprinkle something on that while you're at it. See what happens.
Feeling the Slovakian wonder. I like that. I took the over in this game too. I expect bedlam from the Columbus perspective. They are top 10 in the league in offense, bottom 5 in defense. Toronto's been a lot more open the last couple games, so I'd love some fire wagon hockey on a Wednesday night. Rosie, we'll leave it at that. You're going to be back in the mix on Friday. We're going to preview another Battle of Ontario coming up, but tomorrow, Dave Pagnotta, the fourth period, is going to be co-hosting, and the one and only Ray Ferraro is going to drop by the show tomorrow.
Love it. I will be checking that one out after the fact, but excited for that as well. So yeah, let's wrap up the week the right way, Nikolai.
Yes, sir. Make sure to check out the Leafs Nation After Dark coming up tonight with Zach Phillips, who's been sprinkling himself into the chat, I guess, checking on Jeff Marek as well and checking in on us. So appreciate that. Make sure you check out the sheet later on today at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcast. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget to visit the LeafsNation.com. And I'm not kidding. I wrote an article about Yanni Hakkapää, how he shouldn't play in the Four Nations. I think this is ridiculous. They got 6 games left after tonight, and he's thinking about playing best on best. Give me a break. But a story for another day. Many thank you to everybody in the chat, producer Vic, for Jay Rosehill. I'm Nick Alberga. Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.